Human Services Youth and Early Learning Committee will come to order on this fine Friday, March 24th, where we have an executive session on 9 bills. There are numerous amendments, so let's get started. Luke, can you please brief us on 5599 amendments?
Of course, Chair Sen. Luke Wickham, Committee Counsel, and as the committee likely recalls, in Gross Substitute Senate Bill 5599 is the bill that was heard 2 days ago that expands the compelling reasons for a youth shelter or other similar organization not to notify a parent and instead notify the Department of Children, Youth, and Families when a child arrives at the shelter who is away from a lawfully prescribed home without parental permission, to include when that minor is seeking or receiving gender-affirming treatment and reproductive health care services, and also creates an exception to the parental authorization required for host homes for that same category. So moving into the amendments, the first amendment is 588, sponsored by Representative Walsh. This amendment modifies the term compelling reason for purposes of when the youth shelter notifies DCYF instead of a parent, to include circumstances that indicate that notifying the parent or legal guardian will subject the minor to abuse or neglect, or when a minor is seeking or receiving reproductive health care services. It also modifies the same term as it applies to host home parental authorization requirements to mean that the youth is seeking or receiving reproductive health care services and not include gender-affirming treatment. It also removes some intent language. I'll move on to the next amendment, which is 590, sponsored by Representative Eslick. This amendment restores the current law definition of compelling reasons for application to the licensed shelter notification requirements. It also modifies the definition of compelling reason as it applies to the host home program requirements, such that it means that circumstances that indicate that notifying the parent or legal guardian will subject the minor to abuse or neglect. So that would be the compelling reason for the host home not to receive parental authorization to provide care for the child. Moving on to the third amendment, 591. This is sponsored by Representative Couture. This amendment modifies the term protected health care services to mean abortion and gender-affirming treatment. The amendment also defines that term, gender-affirming treatment, to mean age-appropriate counseling and support services for youth and young adults experiencing gender dysphoria. Moving on to the fourth amendment, Wickham 587. This amendment sponsored by Representative Sen. This amendment requires that a host home program that serves a youth without parental authorization who's seeking or receiving protected health care services meet certain requirements, including report to DCYF within 72 hours of the youth's participation in the program. And after that report, DCYF must make a good faith effort to notify the parent and offer services designed to resolve the family conflict. The second requirement is that the host home program report to DCYF at least once a month if the youth remains in the home longer than 1 month. And finally, provide case management outside the host home and away from any individuals residing in the home at least once per month. The amendment does one other thing, which it allows host homes to provide care for a youth who's receiving services from the department if the youth is not subject to a dependency proceeding and that youth is seeking or receiving protected health care services. Moving on to the fifth amendment, 589, sponsored by Representative Dent. This amendment replaces the bill with a requirement that the Office of Homeless Youth contract with an outside entity to gather information around the number of unsheltered homeless youth in the state and develop recommendations for supporting those youth, and then submit that information to the legislature by December 1st of this year. And then the final amendment for 5599 is H-1677.2, sponsored by Representative Couture. This replaces the bill with requirement that licensed shelter organization notify DCYF when a shelter organization is aware that the youth who appears at the shelter is seeking or receiving protected health care services, so that the department can connect the youth and family with appropriate counseling services. And the department is required to identify appropriate counseling services for youth seeking or receiving protected health care services and their family members, develop and implement a referral system to connect those families and youth with those services, and provide payment for appropriate counseling services if those counseling services are not covered by the youth or family members' health insurance.
Luke, question on that one. On the first bullet, the first section, does the requirement for the shelter to notify DCYF and connect them with appropriate counseling, does that supersede them providing family reconciliation services, or is it additive, or is it replacement of what they need to do?
They would be required to provide both, so it's additive.
Thank you. Any other questions on those amendments? Okay, the Human Services, Youth and Early Learning Committee will come back to order for executive session. We're just going to run through the agenda. Start at the top. Vice Chair Cortez. Engrossed substitute Senate Bill 5599.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that engrossed substitute Senate Bill 5599 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
It has been moved and seconded that engrossed substitute Senate Bill 5599 be moved out of committee with a due pass recommendation. There are amendments. First amendment, Representative Walsh.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to move Amendment Wickham 588.
Wickham 588 has been moved and seconded. Remarks, Representative Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was really interested by the overwhelming opposition that this bill faced from the public who commented on it in our comment system here, and tried to get to why there's such opposition to this bill. And it has to do with the definition of compelling reasons that is in the bill. And what this amendment does is it tries to clarify and, frankly, narrow that definition of compelling reasons. In the underlying bill currently as drafted, the underlying reasons includes a non-exhaustive list of things that could be a compelling reason to hide a minor child's location from custodial parents or guardians. And I think that some of the opposition to this bill is based on the fact that this key element of the bill is a non-exclusive list. So the amendment narrows it down. It makes it not, it removes the non-exhaustive list element and says, here's what compelling reasons are. Primarily, that to notify the custodial parents or guardians or caregivers would create a likely situation of abuse for the minor child, which is basically what existing law says. And then in cases where the minor child is seeking reproductive health services, that would be a reason to hide the child's whereabouts and well-being from the custodial parents or guardians. And I think that's important to leave in place because the people of the state have spoken repeatedly that they support access to reproductive health care services. So that's what the amendment does. It narrows down the controversial concept of compelling reasons in the bill to clear points that would constitute compelling reasons to hide a child's location from parents or guardians. I think it is clarifying. I think it improves the bill. It won't get rid of all the opposition, but I think it would satisfy some of it anyway. Please vote yes.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Cortez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to respectfully ask for a no vote on the amendment. Narrowing the definition will put youth in danger. Having worked in the industry for a number of years with an organization that had an emergency shelter, a transitional living program, a prevention program, which served both youth and parents. When working at that shelter, I had a caseload of about 30 to 35 youth at any one time. Over the course of many years, I served hundreds of youth, with a lot of them being are identifying as LGBTQ+. These youth experience tremendous trauma. Having a safe shelter for them to go and trust will save their lives. In 2022, 52% of LGBTQ youth consider suicide, and we need to save these lives. These youth are in enormous danger when they're out in the streets. They get trafficked, they get abused. It happens constantly. I've seen it. I've worked with parents and youth who have experienced this sort of trauma, and I respectfully ask for no vote to make sure these youth have appropriate and safe access to shelter.
Thank you. Additional remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of Amendment Wickham 588, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. The amendment is not adopted. There are additional amendments. Representative Eslick.
Thank you, Chair Sen. Please move Wickham 590.
Wickham 590 has been moved and seconded. Remarks, Representative Eslick.
Thank you, Chair. So this this amendment just narrows it again so that we make sure that our parents have notification when a child or youth appears in one of these host homes, or we've got particular 2 or 3 of them in our close location, and I just have to mention that I have a very good friend that has been dealing with this same situation since her child was 13 years old, who is now 16. And yes, it's a very complicated life that they're all living, but I know how terribly catastrophe, the feelings that these parents have when they don't know where these kids are. Even when there is conflict in the home, if they can't know where these kids are, they are up 24/7 looking themselves for these kids. So if this child is in a home and for whatever reason they're there, whatever reason, that the management makes sure that the parent knows that they are there and safe. That puts that parent at ease. And then the counseling can start, and the family reconciliation, and all the proper things that need to happen for that family unit. So please vote yes on this amendment to put these parents' minds at ease. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Cortez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I'm going to respectfully recommend a no on the amendment. We want to make sure that the youth first have trust and access to the shelter. When the youth don't have trust with shelters and don't want to seek services at those sites, then they're going to be out in the streets, and the parents really won't have any ability to know where their youth is, and it may take longer for that youth to seek services and for that parent to be able to find them. Again, having worked in this industry for a number of years, I've seen what happens to youth when they don't trust staff, when they know that they can't stay at that shelter, when they know they can't return home, they get lost to the streets, and they do become chronically homeless adults with a horrible array of mental health and substance abuse issues. So again, I respectfully ask for a no vote to make sure that youth have access to the shelter, so then eventually that shelter does lead to family reconciliation services down the line.
Thank you. Additional remarks? Representative Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also asking for a yes vote on Wickham 590. I think one of the reasons that it's important to narrow this definition of compelling reasons to situations in which it would be likely for the minor child to suffer abuse because of the notification to the custodial parents is that we heard during testimony on this bill heartfelt but in my opinion, misguided belief that the lack of sufficient affirmation of child's wishes is harm, and that harm is abuse. Now, this is, maybe a compelling belief system, but I don't believe that makes for good public policy. Now, protecting a minor child, if there's a likelihood of physical abuse, that seems in the wheelhouse of public policy. But merely not affirming a child's wishes to be the basis of hiding the child's whereabouts from custodial parents seems a bridge too far. This amendment clears that up and says that it's only in cases where there's likelihood for that child to really be physically abused does that hiding become necessary. I think that's an important distinction to make, and this amendment does it. Please vote yes.
Thank you. Additional remarks? Oh, Representative Taylor?
Thank you, Representative Walsh, for your comments. I, too, sat here and heard the comments about affirming, and I came to a different conclusion around whether or not some folks were inferring that it was abuse. I see that we're trying to address a compelling barrier that children are facing around seeking services from adults and caring individuals who want to make sure that their safety is prioritized. Kids who are disconnected from systems that can help them in their immediate need. I think that the affirmation issue is less about the abuse assumption. We don't have that information. What we're saying is that we need to prioritize children getting into services and getting into care and being in a safe environment so we can get started on reconciliation with the family.
Thank you. Any additional remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of Amendment Wickham 590, please indicate with your aye vote. Aye. Those wishing to vote no, say no or nay. Nay. The amendment is not adopted. There are additional amendments. Representative Couture.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Wickham 591.
Wickham 591 has been moved and seconded. Remarks. Representative Couture.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a clarifying amendment that I feel is responsive to much of the testimony on both sides about what exactly kind of care that was going to be received. And what we heard from both sides of the argument on this bill, on the underlying bill, was that, and I'm just going to read the definition as defined as age-appropriate counseling and support services for youth and young adults experiencing gender dysphoria. That would be the basic definition of gender-affirming treatment with this amendment. And what we heard from both sides was that that was what was being sought, even from those trans youth or people who were now adults who wish they had these services anyway. And so personally, I feel that, if you know that counseling is the first step to any gender-affirming transition anyway, or gender-affirming care, I should say, but that counseling is vitally important, and I think we should be clear and concise about what that means as the definition. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to respectfully ask for a no vote. Just lots of times in our committee and in other parts of the legislature, we try and have streamlined definitions of things, and the underlying bill refers to the RCW where these definitions live, and I think it's more efficient and better government to have common definitions across all sorts of legislation. I'm going to respectfully ask for a no vote. Any additional remarks? Representative Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. I'm asking for a yes vote on the amendment because without this amendment, it may be that a minor child who is seeking more than just counseling, more than just the initial stages of a transition, may use that desire as the basis for being hidden, his or her location hidden from the custodial parents. While it's true that other sections of our CW may speak to this more clearly, Without this amendment, this bill does not. And there are many areas within this bill that would be subject, perhaps, to tragic misinterpretation. And this amendment lessens the likelihood of that, at least in this one narrow context. So please vote yes.
Thank you. Any additional remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of Wickham 591, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The amendment is not adopted. There are additional amendments. I move Wickham 587.
It's been moved and second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So this amendment before you, I think, seeks to address some of the concerns that we heard and that we all felt pretty intensely, that if a child is at a host home, we still want to make sure that we know where they are, that the parents have a chance to be notified, that DCYF is tracking where they are. So we're putting in some making sure that host homes are reporting to DCYF in situations where a youth with the compelling reason as defined in the bill is there, making sure that at least on a monthly basis that they are being notified, which also reinitiates family reconciliation services and ensures that there's an opportunity for the child to be separate from that host home, just to receive services, just to make sure, again, that that host home is going well for them. And I think, again, this really addresses some of those core issues of making sure that parents have the chance to know where their children are, and if not the parent, then at a minimum DCYF. And again, letting those family reconciliation services restart each month to reapproach the child to see if that those services are now appropriate. So I'm going to ask for a yes vote on this amendment. Additional remarks, Representative Couture.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this amendment. It does. It's thoughtful. It adds some additional layers for the host homes that weren't there before. But there is also a concern that this could lead to a lot of litigation for DCYF and what that might look like. And so I think we're going to be a mix.
Okay. Additional remarks, Representative Dent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While the amendment isn't perfect, I think it does improve the underlying bill. So, and there are several arguments, what it does or doesn't do to the bill, and I appreciate all of those. But for today, I will be a yes on your amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment does clarify some things and makes us better, so thank you for offering it. I'm still kind of a soft no on it for some of the reasons that Rep. Couture touched on. I believe that in the underlying bill throughout, the agency is going to be exposed to legal liability here. And when I say the agency, I mean all taxpayers who fund the agency are going to be exposed to legal actions if a minor child, is hidden from custodial parents for reasons that later end up harmful to the child or harmful to the family, to the parents. And this, it's almost, that which improves the bill hurts the bill. While this amendment actually clarifies some things and I believe improves the ability of families to know where their children are, it also lays bare the fact that DCYF now has a more active role in this policy that could expose DCYF as a co-defendant in a lawsuit against what so far have been lawsuits against doctors performing certain procedures. I'm not sure how we square this circle, but I appreciate the effort to try. So thank you, and I will be a very soft no on the amendment.
Thank you. Additional remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of Wickham 587, please indicate by saying aye. 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 Those opposed, nay. The amendment is adopted. That was very soft, very soft. Thank you. There are additional amendments. Representative Dent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Wickham 589.
Wickham 589 has been moved and seconded. Remarks, Representative Dent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So What an interesting hearing we had with a lot of people all across the spectrum relating to this issue. And you know, I have to say that I learned a lot, and I gleaned a lot of information from the hearing. But I didn't, somehow I missed the real compelling reason or the data that I felt we needed to move this policy forward. I think we're lacking some things. I think we're lacking some information. So hence the reason for this amendment is to let's step back and do a study and to see exactly what the needs are out there, that we get it right. This bill can change people's lives in a dramatic way. And I think that we as legislators have a responsibility to take a look at what we do and be sure we're doing the right thing. And, you know, some of you that have been here a little longer with me, you know, you've heard me say, you know, when we formed the DCYF, I mean, and I'm proud of the work we put into it, and you know, we're not where we want to be yet, but you know, my hope was that we'd sit on our rocking chairs when we're old and say we did the right thing. And I feel that way about every piece of legislation that I vote for, that I want to feel like I did the right thing. So that's why I offer this amendment. I would truly like to see us make sure we're doing the right thing. So I would ask you, my colleagues here, for a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I respectfully ask us to vote no against this amendment. Representative Dent, I agree with you. This bill can change lives, but more importantly, this bill can save lives. We need to take action now. Our children, our nieces, our nephew, our kin, our family are desperately trying to survive out there on the streets. They are at risk of exploitation. They are at risk of trafficking. They are at risk of substance use. When we talk about accountability, when you bring them inside, that's accountability. When you bring them inside, that's the opportunity to be connected to people who want to see them survive. Not just survive, but thrive. We need to take action now, and this bill is a response to these young people when we do these one-night counts, kids on the street, adults on the street. Why are you out here? What's going on? How can we help you? And they say, I don't want to go into a shelter because I can't get access. I'm afraid that my family won't support me. I'm afraid to be reunited with folks who have abused me. We need to make sure that we provide the resources and respond to the critical need of a population that has said, I need this specific type of help. And we're doing that now. So we don't need to study this any further. We need to take action now. We need to save lives.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Couture.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm urging a yes vote on this, and it's not like there isn't trans youth that are experiencing this and having, you know, feeling like they need to run away. But when I asked the prime sponsor and a few times during committee, how many trans youth is this affecting? The answer was, well, the Trevor report says there's 30,000 LGBTQ plus youth in our state that are unsheltered. And unsheltered could mean more things than just homeless on the street. It could be couch surfing. It could be living at a friend's house. And LGBTQ is a much broader spectrum of people than just trans youth covered under this bill. And so for years now, the last, 3 years, we heard follow the science, follow the data, get all the facts. And we just don't seem to have any of that data and facts. And as the prime sponsor noted to us, that those numbers are hard to get at right now. That's were his words. And it's incumbent upon us, I believe, that when we make substantial policy that could be trampling upon the constitutional rights of parents to parent their children, that we at least find the facts and the data to support what we're trying to do, the exact data and facts. And right now, 30,000 unsheltered LGBTQ plus youth on our streets is a light year away from a real data point about how many exactly trans youth in that category are experiencing this problem. And I don't say that there aren't any experiencing this problem, but our policy should match the data and the facts. And for that reason, I would urge a yes on this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Couture. Additional remarks, Representative Callan.
Thank you, Chair Sen, and thank you for your comments. And you all have heard me talk about the need for data and following the data. Certainly from my background, I'm a big advocate of that. And I don't disagree. We need to understand the data and bring more data to it. But this is not an either or, this is an absolute and. Parents don't want their children dying in the streets. Parents do not want their children being subject to sex trafficking. We do have data that shows the high levels of suicide rates and ideation for our youth that are LGBTQ. We have to take action now to save those lives, and we can get the data, see how that unfolds, and continue to improve the system. But there is no excuse not to work to try to save every life we can in this world right now. We see it too often in our K-12 school systems. We're seeing it too much in community. We know the risks. We know they're there, and let's go get the data and save lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Walsh.
There are foundational rights of parents and families. And parents have constitutional rights and statutory rights to raise their children as they see fit. And this is the reason that this is a controversial policy. This is the reason why there's so much opposition, is that if we say that we need to save lives at the cost of undermining the constitutional rights of parents and definition of family, then we are at a place of great civil uncertainty and disagreement, and there's going to continue to be this kind of controversy. I don't have a solution, but we know that the numbers we've heard thrown around about this issue are not just inconsistent, but in some cases contradictory. We've heard some testimony that the need for gender-affirming care is actually very small. And other testimony that there are thousands or tens of thousands of children who may need it. So it is a situation where I think we need to get reliable information about how much of an issue this really is before changing our statutes in a way that may put them in conflict with more foundational rights of parents and families. So this is profound stuff, and I think we need to move very carefully. Vote yes on the amendment.
Thank you. I know, I'm not sure what data number or result of that data would move others on this committee. I know for me, saving one life moves me. So I'm going to ask for a no vote on this amendment. Any additional remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of Wickham 589, please indicate with your aye vote. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The amendment is not adopted. There are additional amendments. Representative Couture.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move 1677.2.
Amendment 1677.2 has been moved and seconded. Remarks, Representative Couture.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Worked very hard on this amendment for a while now, and I know we had some discussions trying to maybe negotiate a bit on this, and didn't quite get there yet, but I think it's a thoughtful amendment, and here's why, and here's what it does. This amendment would say that we do respect parental rights. We do notify parents when a child in crisis shows up to a shelter. But then what it recognizes is that what we've said many times in this committee, that keeping families together is critically important, and that my belief that any child in crisis, for that matter, but especially maybe a trans child in crisis who is running away, maybe the family just doesn't understand what they're trying to do, right? And maybe there isn't affirmation or whatever the reason could be. You can't hide in a shelter for 7 years. You have to go back to your family at some point. And so do we start that process at the beginning, or do we start it later after we've made it worse with the family? And so what this would do is notify parents, understand that they have constitutional rights, but then it would say that the most critical part of this first step is counseling. And as Mr. Wickham pointed out in the brief, it would be two kinds of counseling services. The FRS service that we already deliver through DCYF, the family reunification, to try to bring that family together. But then also counseling service about what that youth is going through healthcare-wise. And the understanding there is that the best way forward for that child, no matter what the ultimate decision is later on down the line, which we heard many times erroneously from both sides, that what this bill does not do is tell you to go do any healthcare services. But what it is saying is that if you're running away for those reasons, but we know that the start of those services is counseling, and that professional counseling, whether it be family reunification or healthcare, is critically important, not only to the child, but to the family as well. And the best thing for that child in crisis, no matter what they're going through, no matter what phase of it they are going through, is to have any semblance of a family structure support system behind them that is starting the process of understanding, that is starting the process of coming together so that we can drive towards the actual intent of this bill, which is something we all agree on, is to curb and ultimately halt and stop transgender suicides. The best way, in my opinion, to do that is to have the family in place and to use professional counseling to build some of that understanding, because you can't hide in the shelter forever. You have to go back at some point. And so it's in that understanding that I introduced this amendment, because I deeply feel that regardless of everything else, I don't want kids to be dying. I don't want them to harm themselves. I don't want them to kill themselves. We should stop that. And I believe the best way to do that is to build that understanding with the family, and I would appreciate a yes vote on this very good amendment.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Ortiz-Self.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really took a second, third, fourth look at this amendment. I love counseling services, obviously. I believe in them. I believe they're transformative. I do believe in family reunification. I do believe if that can occur, it is in the best interest of everybody. To me, it saddens me to think that a young person loses their family forever. It's not something that is preferred, of course. What I'd like to say is I'm willing to continue to look at this to see if we can tweak it a little and maybe do a floor amendment. I had some concerns about counseling services being left undefined. I also believe counseling services could be grief counseling and a lot of other things that happen in this process. And my biggest issue, the one I couldn't go with, was that the striker does not include host homes. So maybe we can look at that a little. Maybe we can look at doing something in this area. It needs a little bit more tweaking for me to be there, but I really want it to be there. So at this point, I'm going to urge a no vote.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Couture?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, thank you for that. It was, you know, anyone watching this right now wouldn't know, but it was in the spirit of collaboration, kind of behind the scenes. A lot of us were discussing this amendment, and I feel, of course, you can't make everyone happy in a bill like this, but it would go miles, country miles, in solving a lot of the issues we've heard from both sides today. And I think that, and I agree that counseling and definitely willing to look at expanding that or looking at exactly how that is delivered, and maybe even some trauma-informed care delivery, right? Let's not keep it off the table because we do need to save a life, you know. But at the same time, I really do appreciate the fact that, you know, we're still going to continue to talk about this, and I hope we do before we hit the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify that case management is precisely what you're asking for, and this bill requires case management. Case management is the referral to other services. Case management is separate from counseling. Case management is motivational interviewing. Case management is helping a young person get access to insurance, access to resources that might be food and other basic needs. Case management is more than just counseling and being very prescriptive. So I think in terms of a further discussion, we can help folks understand the difference between case management and counseling so that we know that those referrals are coordinated. I don't think it needs to be done at the DCYF level. I think because it's required of the host homes and the other services where they're placed, that is the best option for the young person.
Thank you. Any additional remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of striking Amendment 1677.2, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The amendment is not adopted. There are no additional amendments. Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the adopted amendment be incorporated into engrossed substitute Senate Bill 5599 and be reported out of committee with a due pass as amended recommendation.
It has been moved and seconded that engrossed, it has been moved and seconded that the amendment be incorporated into a striking amendment. Okay, that it be incorporated into a striking amendment and that engrossed substitute Senate Bill 5599 be moved out of committee do pass. Discussion. I will start on this one. Just really want to thank this committee for the very compassionate and thoughtful conversation about this very important issue. I think we all, agree that we want to make sure that our children are safe and that they are sheltered. And right now there is indeed a youth homelessness crisis on top of, the general homelessness crisis. And this is an approach that might be that is targeted, and we think will be extremely impactful for those youth that need this this piece of legislation. So, in order to support our youth in all the anxiety and stress and trauma that they might be going through, we want to get them indoors. We want to get them to a shelter. We want to get them access to services. We want to get them reconnected with their families in a safe way. And I think this bill is a key way that we can get our kids off the street and be compassionate in their time of need at the same time as working quite strongly to get them reunified with their family. Because as we have said in this committee, that being reunified is the best option as long as it can be done safely. And again, I think this is getting those kids on a road to safety and to reunification and to self-actualization. So I'm going to ask for a yes vote on this bill. Representative Eslick.
Thank you, Chair Sen. I too want to thank everybody at this committee level. We all have hearts that are bigger than ourselves. And this conversation has been amazing. Now, we definitely, truly want the same results. It's how do we get there? What path do we take? What is the best for the child? And what is the best for the parents? And in the end, it's the family unit that is so important that we stay intact. Most of us sitting at this counter have family members that are dealing in these crises now. If it isn't your brother, your sister, it's your granddaughter, grandson, it's somebody in your life, and we watch it. And so, in the end, we want the best. And at this point, we just don't see the same journey to the end result as you folks. And so we will continue to work on it. We will continue to talk about it, I think, for many years to come. And so we will be a no on this side, and you're going to hear more from my team here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional remarks? Representative Ortiz-Self?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for those words. I do think we want to we want the right thing for our children and our families. I am compelled, though, to say that I don't think we have a few years to keep working on this. That's my urgency. Maybe a few years to continue to tweak, but we've got to act. It was probably 15 years ago when I was working at the high school that I found a 16-year-old crouched in the corner of a bathroom with black eyes and a sprained wrist and shoulder from being beaten up on the streets. I think the part that we're missing is that kids aren't leaving home because parents are saying to them, I don't think you should be trans, or I don't affirm your choice. Kids are leaving home because they're being kicked out, because parents are saying it's this or get out of my house. Kids aren't readily, and maybe there's one or two, but kids do not give up the security of their home, their families, their bed. For Pete's sake, this young lady, her stuffed animals at 16 in the corner of her room. They don't give that up because the mom doesn't agree with the choice of outfit she's wearing or the fact that she thinks she's a boy. They're giving it up because they're being kicked out, because parents are saying this or get the hell out of my house. And so they're leaving to survive. And when they're out on the street, they're not surviving. They're getting beaten up, they're getting trafficked, they're getting raped. This is happening to them. And so it's not an easy answer. It's definitely not one for me, who believes very highly that that family needed to be intact, that there needed to be services in there, that family needed to embrace each other and work through this issue. But it's not happening in some cases. And I have to be realistic that in some cases parents are saying, get out. And then you have a 15 and a 16-year-old out on the streets, the most vulnerable she can ever be, or he can ever be, or they can ever be. And this is our opportunity to step in and say, at least you have 3 meals a day and a home, and give and buy ourselves some time to help them work through the trauma and the grief and the hurt of everything that is happening to them, so that we don't lose one more child because they want to give up. This little girl in the bathroom wanted to give up. She just didn't want to be here anymore. And I can't believe that how angry her parents were at the moment they would ever want to see her disappear from this earth. And this bill could help buy us some time to see if we could get there, to see if we could get the reunification, to see if we can mend the hurt, to see if we could support this person. And at this point, I have to say, please, let's give some time, because without it, we're going to lose them. And that's not okay either. So it's not perfect. I hope parents can see that this is trying to buy time for that healing to occur, because it doesn't always happen instantly. So I'm going to urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Dent.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be brief because I know we're chasing the clock. But 5,840 people signed in on this bill. And then we heard about parental rights. We heard about child safety and concern, and we're hearing it today, and I get that. I really get it. We worry about shelters, and there's conflict at home, and I get that. And we've always had conflict in our society, and I grew up in a home that had some conflict. We found a way through it. But out of those 5,840 people, only 507 of them supported the bill. That's about 8.5%. And I went through the list. I always find it fascinating the people that sign into a bill and where they're from. And we all know we have a diverse state. We're very diverse in this committee, and that's to be celebrated. But the majority of the people that I saw, I didn't go through every name. It would take me longer to do that, but I did look at where the people were from. The majority are from the west side of the state. So I think that where the majority of the issue is what I'm hearing. Okay, now I could be wrong, but trying to read between the lines. But I think these people, and many were parents, I think they know the issue too. And I think to not listen to them is not doing our due diligence. And that's what concerns me. But, so, to be brief, I'm just asking for a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional remarks? Representative Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The bill has major issues: constitutional, conceptual, structural. It's not ready to become law. Please vote no. But beyond the structural problems and definitional problems in the bill is changing foundational notions of parental rights. And while these experiments with changing foundational notions of parental rights may be well-intended, they may come from a place of compassion for minor children who are confused and in pain in their lives. Madam Speaker, I think we are going to continue to see a massive public response to this proposal because it is tampering with foundational notions of parental rights. I think we need to put this bill aside and find another way, another proposal to help the children that we want to help. This is not the way, and this is going to create more division and discord in this state if it becomes law. So please vote no on this bill.
Thank you. Additional remarks, Representative Couture.
Maybe last and least. You know, I think we got to vote no on this bill, and I hear, you know, the very passionate plea to help save these kids, and but the 14th Amendment, the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment is very clear, and the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled like over 7 times in various states, including our own, Washington v. Glucksberg, that parents have the right to parent, they have the right to care for their children, they have the right to educate them, and many other things. And if we pass this bill as it is, without trying to find a way to perfect it on the floor, to craft in a way such as my amendment did, that restores and protects some parental rights, it will just be unconstitutional, and we'll be back here again to do it all over, and we will have saved nobody. And so that's why doing the hard work to perfect it now will save us more time to do it right now than to do it wrong and have to redo it right again later. I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sen.
Sen votes aye.
Representative Sen votes aye. Cortez.
Cortez votes aye.
Representative Cortez votes aye. Taylor.
Taylor votes aye.
Representative Taylor votes aye. Eslick.
Eslick votes nay, do not pass.
Representative Eslick votes nay, do not pass. Couture.
No, do not pass.
Representative Couture votes no, do not pass. Callan.
Callan votes aye.
Representative Callan votes aye. Dent.
Dent votes nay, do not pass.
Representative Dent votes nay, do not pass. Goodman.
Representative Goodman votes aye.
Representative Goodman votes aye. Ortiz Self. Representative Ortiz Self votes aye. Rule.
Rule votes aye.
Representative Rule votes aye. Walsh.
Nay, do not pass.
Representative Walsh votes nay, do not pass.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to change their vote? Seeing none, will the clerk please report the tally?
Madam Chair, there are 7 ayes, 4 nays, and 0 excused votes.
With your vote, engrossed substitute Senate Bill 5599 is moved out of committee. Again, thank you to committee members for that respectful debate. Mr. Vice Chair, and just